Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearless and Free TV. This morning, I'm super excited to introduce you all to my friend, Steve Weber. So Steve and I met on Christmas Day, actually. He was part of a show called Jolly Gone Wild, which I didn't know at the time. It's part of a collective media group that we're now both a part of that's called Spirituality Gone Wild. You might have heard me talk about Spirituality Gone Wild before. And we are both broadcasters within this collaborative or a collective cooperation, however we decide to term it. As I've talked about before, that is part of the new Earth reality we're creating, where we're working in cooperation and alliances rather than competitions and collabs. So Steve's part of that cooperation. And I met him on a Christmas Day with his Jolly Gone Wild. It was for people who were sitting home alone, so we didn't have to sit at home alone.
Right. Nobody had to spend Christmas alone.
No Christmas alone. So, as some of you might recall, I'm actually in the middle of a divorce, and my kids spent Christmas Day with their dad, so I was sitting at home alone. And to keep me from from having my own private pity party, I joined this group of other single grown-ups who were spending Christmas alone. And Steve and I just hit it off. I spent the entire day just with, Zoom live streaming in the background while I went about my day. And he sent me a message afterwards to Facebook to thank me for being on the show. And then something amazing happened. So one thing that's been really, really fascinating this year, really starting with the 12-21-20, the shift out of the old world and into the new world, because as you know, I've talked before about how we are now locked and loaded in the age of Aquarius, which happened on December 21st of 2020. And what's been happening in my life since then has been fascinating. I have started connecting with people all over the world who are what I call soul family. Now, some of these people I've known before, just have randomly met over the years, but they're all kind of coming together in this amazing intercreation that I've been talking about for years, and we're actually starting to see it happen. So people I haven't seen in years are showing back up in my field again. I had someone last week who I hadn't talked to in 40 years who showed back up in my field again out of the blue. And Steve's story is fascinating. So he sent me a message on Facebook and he said, "Hey, thanks for coming to Jolly Gone Wild. Glad you were there." And then a minute later, he sent another message that said, "I was looking at your profile. Are you from a place called Pinesdale?" And I was like, really? Nobody, this is a town that's never had more than 1,000 people population. It is a blip on the map. And only people who've been around there would even know of its existence. So it turns out that
I lived in Hamilton, Montana, which is right next to Pinesdale, and I didn't actually live in the town of Hamilton. I lived in the outskirts in the unincorporated area, and my property was kind of right backed up to Pinesdale, and so I knew all about the community, or I knew generally about the community, and it turns out that's where you were born and raised.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? So for those of you who have been following me for a few years, you know that this was a polygamist cult that I grew up in. Teeny tiny little thing in the mountains of Montana. So when I was born, there were only 6 families. So that was the only life I knew. So to meet someone randomly on the internet across the world who used to live literally less than a mile from where I grew up is amazing and extraordinary. So since December, we've become really good friends. And we hadn't ever met in person. We just would, he's interviewed me a couple of times on my show, and I've never interviewed him. So
I
reverse that. He interviewed me.
You on my show,
Yeah.
The American Gumption show, and you hadn't interviewed me yet on Fearless and Free. So here we are.
So here we are in Fearless and Free. Yeah, scratch what I said. Listen to what he said. So Steve and I have become really good friends, and on Sunday night,
I arrived
he came to my house.
Right, I arrived. I flew a week ago out to California. I'm living on the East Coast and north of Philadelphia. And I'm transporting a car across the country. And so I got a 3.5 week journey, and I thought, why not come to Southern California? Because several of the other co-creators, in addition to Victoria, live in this area. And so I thought, I'm going to meet the other people, start meeting in person the people that I've gotten to know in the last year from Spirituality Gone Wild, and meet them in person, meet them face to face. And so Victoria was kind enough to invite me to camp out for the last week, and it's been a wonderful time, and about to get in the car and drive away, but here we are.
Yeah, so it's been a blast to get here Sunday night. I just happened to have a spare room for him to stay in. And as I mentioned on your show a few minutes ago, part of this was getting past my own fear of being alone in a house with a man I don't know, and being alone in a car with a man I don't know. This was my own, another leveling up of my own personal fearlessness and freedom. And he's just been a blast to hang out with. And I'm really excited to introduce you to this guy, because it's a whole subculture I didn't even know existed. So, Steve.
Victoria.
For 15 years.
Was
Forrest Gump.
I sat on the bench and acted dumb all day long. No, the story is that the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company opened in 1996, and I ended up getting connected with them. But the slightly longer version is that in 1982, someone said, "Hey, you look like the guy from Bosom Buddies." And I said, "What's his name?" And they said, "I don't know." He was just an unknown actor in the TV sitcom Bosom Buddies. And then, of course, people figured out it was Tom Hanks. And then over the next decade, people would say over and over again, "Has anyone ever told you look like Tom Hanks? Do you know who you look like?" And I heard it not just a dozen times, not just 100 times, hundreds of times, probably thousands of times, or certainly 1,000 times plus more. And so I heard it regularly. It was part of my, experience through my, mid to late 20s and into my 30s. And then what happened was people would say, "Have you ever thought of making any money off of this?" And it almost became like a comical how people would start out with, "Hey, do you know who you look like?" And then ask me a few more questions, and then always get to, "Why don't you figure out how to make some money off of this?" And I really didn't have any intention of that. I just was minding my own business, but, you hear something more, you hear something once, it's like, there you go. You hear something twice, then you start to hear it like 100 times, and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute, what's going on here?" So anyway, I ended up telling people, I got tired of having the conversation. And so I just start, when people said, "Do you know who Tom Hanks?" Have you ever? Yes, I'm going to make some money off of it. I could answer their question before they even asked it. And so anyway, I probably told people that I was going to make money off of it, hundreds of times. And so then, in 1994, in July, the movie Forrest Gump came out. And that year for Halloween, I was Forrest Gump. I went and found the white suit and a blue shirt and suitcase and chocolate box, and off to the party I went, and had a great time. Put the suit in the closet, the suitcase in the closet, found an old suitcase, put that in the closet, and figured that was the end of it. My Gump career was over. And a year and a half, or a year and a few months later, I heard a radio broadcast, or a kind of a news story, and they were opening the Bubba Gump restaurant in Monterey, California. I'm living in San Jose, so just 75 miles up the road. And I end up contacting the organizers of it, and got myself an interview, showed up, and the place was full because they were practicing to open the restaurant in about a week. And so they ended up hiring me for the grand opening. And then I worked weekends for them that summer. And the next year they opened the second location in San Francisco. And I ended up working for them for a total of 15 years as their Forrest Gump impersonator, and opened 22 U.S. locations and 8 international. So I did a lot of gumping over those years.
That was a lot of gumping. The thing I like about that is, how fearless is that to go to a corporation and say, "Hey, you need me."
Yeah.
Not too many people have the gumption to do that.
Yeah, and it was funny, Victoria, that you bring that up because there was a moment where I kind of had to have a moment of truth where I went, oh my gosh, I have, and this is processing in your subconscious. You're not like actually thinking this out loud as much as you're just, playing it in your head. And I thought, I have told hundreds of people that I was going to make money off of it. Now there's suddenly this opportunity to do that. Am I brave enough to actually pick up the phone and call these people to message? This is 1996, so the internet wasn't really, we weren't, we were like dabbling in it, but it wasn't the normal communication way. There was no website. And so I ended up finding them, calling them, leaving a message, and I got a call back. And I knew at that moment, if I didn't act on calling them, then I would never be able to use that line that I had used hundreds of times where I said, I'm going to make some money off of this. And so it was like that moment of truth. There's like, and sometimes you face those moments of truth in your life where, you just have to either put up or shut up, because I had a great time using that and telling people, but I had no intention of really going and making money off of it. But when suddenly the opportunity presented itself, it was like, oh my gosh, am I brave enough to really do this? And it did take, I had to dig deep to do it. So it would have been easier to just say, oh, well, whatever.
So. And you had to kind of, there's a bit of an internal integrity there, right?
Yeah.
It says, I've been saying this for how many years? Am I really ready to do what I have been saying? Oh, that's a good one for me. Am I really ready to do what I've been saying I've been wanting to do? And actually just take that leap, that leap of faith, if you will, and just go for it. And you knew there was a potential there would say, we're not interested in that, but they probably didn't even have that idea until you proposed it.
Right. They were another brand, and they were, experimenting with creating this new Bubba Gump concept. And so they had, kind of, were making a kind of I won't say a do or die decision in terms of the company, but it was a big step for them. And so they were trying to get the menu right and the, what the service was going to be like and what the, all of the details of operationally running a restaurant. And they had never even considered, they never even thought about having a Forrest Gump impersonator. So when I showed up, and of course, when I went to the interview, I was in character, and I ended up walking in, and the place was filled, and I just started working the tables, going and greeting people and offering chocolates, and people were, in fact, it was kind of weird. It was kind of like surreal. When I walked in, like the place like erupted into applause, and people were, like, everybody stopped and looked at me, and then, talk about fear.
So I've been getting to know this guy in the past week. So what I'm hearing is that's when you got hit with the entertainment bug, as in like something inside of you said, I really enjoy being an entertainer, but I secretly know it started in middle school. We'll get into that. He was like the class clown troublemaker as a kid.
I was entertaining all of my life. And so, but suddenly what I did see was an opportunity to do it on kind of a bigger stage. And in fact, there was the chairman of the Bubba Gump restaurant, who I would only see, during an opening. I would see some of the other people a little more than that, but the fellow who was kind of, heading up from a big picture point of view, he wasn't part of the day-to-day operations. And I would always see him and I say, thank you for giving me another stage to perform on. That was my standard line to him. I'd say, thank you for giving me one more stage to perform on. So, so I had these stages all around the country that I got to go to and visit, from time to time. Monterey and San Francisco were my home stores, and I worked there, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, Thursdays during the summer too. And, a typical day I'd meet somewhere from, 1,000+ people interacting with. These were high foot traffic tourist areas, and everybody had a camera because it was either Monterey or San Francisco, Pier 39, and so everybody's a tourist who's there, and they walk by, and here's Forrest Gump and a bench, and they would take a picture with me. So it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. You were the celebrity.
It was
That was fun. And then you did that for about 15 years?
Yeah. So the first 10 years, really full time. And then the last 5 years became, more of a half time. And then, more like holiday weekends the last couple of years, the last 2-3 years was mostly because I moved to Montana.
Right.
I would just go to different special occasions throughout the year.
Yeah. And everything we know has a life cycle. So
and everything has a life cycle.
Kind of cycled its way out. And then you ended up in Montana.
Yes. And that was really the result of, well, what am I going to do after this, comes, because I knew it would come to an end. And it was funny. I'll just tell one more piece of it. Like in year one, people said, oh, this is great. Oh, great. What are you going to do next year when nobody remembers the movie? I heard that line lots and lots of times. And then, like in year two, people said, oh, this is great for 2 years, but what are you going to do next year when nobody remembers the movie or cares about Forrest Gump anymore? And then, and so my answer became, well, I'll just do it for another year or two until nobody cares anymore. Yeah. And so anyway, after 5 years,
it ended up being such a great
and
movie
after 10
that people
years,
still remember.
And after 13 years, it just kept going. But I did know that, it was obviously, and it was lots of fun for me. I loved it. But it was also very, I was in a character the whole time, so I really couldn't get into much of a conversation with people. People would be like, well, what's your real name? And I'd lean in and I go, my real name is Forrest Gump. And then they'd say, oh, you're in character. You can't tell us. Okay. And so, okay. Oh, you want to know my real name? Forrest Gump. So we had a lot of fun with it.
And you met thousands and thousands of people over the years.
Boy, I think I probably had a million interactions over the years between Monterey, San Francisco, and all of the other stores that I met with. I ended up going to Hong Kong 5 times, Japan twice, the Philippines a couple times, Mexico several times. So yeah, it was a wonderful experience getting to travel around the world. Now, one thing I did notice as I traveled around the world is the different cultures and the way people interact. And in the United States, people are they are fearless. People in the United States are fearless, and they're like, hey, Gump, and they just like barge right into the bench and sit down and, take a picture with you. In some of the Asian cultures, people were a lot more standoffish and, didn't want to make eye contact. So it was harder to get engaged to people. Now they liked it. They would smile and, but it was a different kind of interaction. Europeans, definitely interacted, more like Americans than say, the Asian cultures, but it worked really well in the U.S.
So what I'm hearing from this is that Americans have got gumption. Americans
have gumption. Oh, that's American Gumption. That would be a good brand. American Gumption. How does that
Gumption,
sound?
What a great idea. So you ended up in Montana. You ended your 15-year stint as Forrest Gump.
Yes.
And then what did you do with that? I know that you have done some things with that because there's always the beginning of the story, right? So that was you up to that point. Then you started a midlife metamorphosis.
Yep. So
the midlife transition, spiritual awakening, they all go hand in hand.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it was 2009. I had arrived in Montana. I had a plan. I had everything figured out. I knew exactly what was going to happen. Guess what happened?
2008. I mean, well, for me it was 2008. The economy went to
Yeah, and
That's age double
I had all
26.
my money in real estate, and I gave up a lot of my income, and I had a lot of mortgages, and I had a lot of equity in real estate, but I didn't have any cash, and so I had no cash flow, and I couldn't get rid of the properties, and so it became a several year cycle of survival in terms of how do you get rid of some of these properties, how do you manage to keep this whole thing floating that required a certain amount of regular income. And I had also decided that I was going to develop a motivational message, which I labeled Gumption at the time. And I joined the Speakers Association, the National Speakers Association, and thought, oh, I'm just going to be a speaker. And it was so easy for me to become Forrest Gump because all I had to do was I had to be a little bit brave and make a phone call. And that's really kind of like, I had to put the costume on and I had to drive the Monterey and meet these people. But essentially it just happened without, much effort. It was like kind of catching lightning in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, I'll just catch new lightning in a bottle, and make my life work in Montana. And, no lightning.
Had your midlife transition,
Yes.
didn't you?
Yes.
So as your life was falling apart, it was really coming together.
Yeah, you
Right.
easily look back at 10 years later and go, oh my gosh, thank God it all worked out exactly the way it worked out. And it was perfect the way, 2009 became my year of awakening. I called it my year of transition. My year of transformation, but I've since have revised that. I call it my year of kind of like a major awakening, the first big awakening. And because really I just went, I can no longer do things the way I was doing them because it just wasn't working. And no, you couldn't work hard enough to work your way out of the jam that I had gotten myself in. And so then it was like, well, what do I do? How do I do this? And so I was introduced to some some companies that do some seminars, and I ended up going to several of them during that year. And I called it, like I said, my year of transformation. Now I'm looking at it like every year is a year of transformation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like 1 year you transform and then, but some years are like more radical than others. And so that was that was the year of awakening in that first big year.
So the economy crashing was the catalyst for awakening.
Yes. And the realization that I can't just continue to, like, the things that I did were like, I would sometimes catch lightning in a bottle, and then sometimes I would fail, like I would just be like, paddling upstream the entire time. And so there was no real, like, I didn't feel like I had any control over why sometimes there were successes in my life and sometimes there were, just that struggle of going upstream the whole time. And so I thought, I've got to understand and figure that out. Now, I don't think I consciously was thinking I don't think I consciously verbalized it that way, but I did certainly feel like something has to change and I've got to start doing things differently.
Yeah. And that's part of that right, even the shift of thinking. I think we kind of, when we get to that midlife, so some people call it a midlife crisis, right? Mm-hmm. We all had our midlife crisis. Mm-hmm. But as an ancient, I think it was a Chinese saying that in every crisis is an opportunity. Mm-hmm. So we can look at it as a midlife crisis and let that be the defining moment of our lives where we let our lives go downhill, or use it as the moment of opportunity to create something entirely new with our lives, which is what you've been doing. You basically have been in this process, one, of recreating yourself. So in that process, you created the Gumption speeches. Yep. We're going to do TED Talks together at some point or something similar, whatever the new TED thing is. And then you started working on some books too.
Yeah. So it was funny. I said, I'm going to be a speaker and, join the NSA but I suddenly realized that I had forgotten one thing.
What's that?
I didn't have a message.
Yeah, I hear you. I really hear you on that because I did the same thing. I thought I was going to be this like rich and famous public speaker because I could talk about polygamy. There's no message. What is the actual message?
I was able to talk about being Forrest Gump or about the movie or, I mean, I was more like a stand-up comedian at the time where I knew how to interact with people.
You were being an entertainer.
I was an entertainer and pure entertainer, and I didn't know who I was. And as I started to unravel that, like really that I needed to have a message, really here's what happened. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't have a message. I need to develop a message. And then it was like, I can't develop a message unless I figure out who I am. And I was 37 years old when I started with Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. So I had been, you know, like you kind of figure some stuff out in your 20s and then into your 30s. You know, you're moving along, but you really don't know who your identity is at that point in time. You're still evolving and trying things and experimenting. And so at age 50, I no longer was Gump. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do next? And I had never really figured out who Steve was in that first 50 years. I just like rode this really big wave of the Forrest Gump wave, and that was magical. And I knew that there was something that I could take that and transform it, but I didn't know how to do that. And it took about 10 years to finally feel like I, you know, put enough of the right pieces in place to go, you know, do, you know, what's really kind of just at the, you know, beginning stages at this point. So the next chapter.
I call that now who do I want to be when I grow up?
Yes. Yes. And I had, if you're a fan of Law of Attraction, which I am, a student of Law of Attraction, and now I can look back at those 10 years and I had said, what did I say to the people I met those first, like I'm going to make some money off of this. Well, I had said, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do. I've got to figure out what I'm going to, well, what does that mean? That means I don't have it figured out what I'm going to do. And so I was energetically stuck in that. I've got to figure this out. I've got to figure this out. And, while I was figuring out pieces of it, there was an overriding, I've got to figure it out. So I was stuck in I'm trying to figure it out. As soon as I figure it out, then I can move forward.
Right.
And, well, I wasn't
But in the
moving
meantime,
forward.
you were going through that transformation process. So a lot of people have this misperception that you go from A to B instantly. Well, so I was kind of in that same thing too, about 10 years of like going into the cocoon at 50, right? And then you're in that cocoon recreating yourself. And then at some point push out of the cocoon as the new version of yourself, which is about what you've now been doing since August.
Yeah.
And, well, I kind of have been doing too since August, interestingly enough, but there was like that 10 years where a lot of us started our spiritual transformation and spiritual awakening with that 2008 holy shift, as I call it, and then have spent the last 10 years really cultivating who we really are. And now, as in 2021, we're now pushing ourselves out of the chrysalis into this new person that we've been working on and
nurturing.
Yeah, great word. Nurturing. Developing, yeah. So now, as I've said before, there are a bunch of us that woke up early because now we're in the middle of a collective, a planetary holy shift. And so those of us that started 10 years ago are now going to be in a position to help the rest of humanity through the collective holy shift that we're going through. The HE double toothpicks that's happening collectively. So, but that's why we woke up early, is so that we can help the rest of humanity move forward through what's happening on the entire planet. Great awakening. So now what are you doing with Gump? Because you're still Gump at the core. Like, you know that you were given this gift for a reason.
Genetic luck.
The gift of Gump.
The gift of genetic luck and Gump, right? And so I had developed the different topics, the principles of gumption and the 3 life lessons from the movie. And those things were like, I thought those were the answer. And what happened was 2 years ago, it was 28, beginning of 2018, so really 3 years ago, I realized that I had I had been sitting on a whole bunch of broken dreams, living in Montana. I had, a property with lots of, there was 2 houses on it, and there was furniture, and there was a garage, and there was a shop, an outbuilding, and another building, and I had stuff in it. And the idea was like I was going to be like this guy living in Montana with like wood shop and a metal shop, and and I had learned all those things in my early days, and I did those things, and they were fun to do. And so I had this idea that I was going to develop all that. And for 10, 15 years when I was in Montana, these things were all just kind of like in storage, sitting there. And I would walk out to the buildings and I'd look, and energetically I just feel like a really heavy, like, oh, I got to go do that. I got to fix all that. So in 2018, I realized that I had been involved in two volunteer organizations for 10 years. And while they were very good for me and I learned a lot, and it was like being part of a community, I also realized that they weren't fun, and I didn't want to, I wanted to like be free from them. And at the same time, then I had an opportunity where I thought I was going to end up traveling for several months for this kind of, production, we'll call it. And it wasn't my production. It was going to be a supporting role. And so I went, oh my gosh, I would like to be out there meeting people. I would like to get out there and go. And I could take that message out and share it with people in a different kind of way than what I had been envisioning and preparing for. And yet all that stuff that was prepared would all work perfectly to support that. So I just started shedding things. So 2018 became like this year of like, I just got to get rid of stuff. And so I got rid of like a lot of the big stuff. And then in 2019, as it began, I ended up finally going, oh my gosh, I'm getting rid of the rest of this stuff and I'm going to leave. And I remember there was this one couple that was visiting me, and they were getting some of the woodworking tools that I had. And they said, well, what do you really want to do? I don't know how they did it. And why they asked that question. And I just like blurted out, I'm going to get an RV and I'm going to travel around the country, and I'm going to meet ordinary people who are living extraordinary lives. And that was like one of the key moments where I was like, I've got to go out on the road. So American Gumption was birthed. And the idea is I'll travel for the next 4 to 7 years, maybe longer, and just go meet people and do interview styles. Charles Kuralt did a on the road broadcast for 20 plus years with CBS or one of the networks. And so anyway, he was out there doing it. So it could be like that, kind of a modern, updated version of that. Or it could be kind of like, the Dirty Jobs where Mike Rowe kind of interviews people. In that case, he's got a niche there. My niche would be different from his, but it's like Gump can be kind of that, like the thread that runs through every show, and Gumption is certainly the thread because we want people who are actually making a difference. And one of the straws that really broke the camel's back was the idea that I was watching the news one day, and it just suddenly dawned on me that everything that they were talking about, and they were talking about it breathlessly, like, oh, this is like breaking news, the most important thing. And everything that they did or talked about had basically zero relevance to my life, and it had zero relevance to all the people that I would come in contact with on a regular basis. And I went, who are these people talking to? And of course they were talking to me, or they were trying to talk to me, but I was like, I don't want to listen to this stuff anymore. And so then I thought, hey, let's go create some happy shows. Let's go. And then it doesn't have to be happy shows like la 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 la, like everything's roses and happiness. It's like, but ordinary people and the trials and tribulations they come through to come out the other side. And the American people have an optimism and a positivity, and they have gumption. And so, like, let's go ahead and highlight what that looks like. What is gumption in the people? And at one moment I went, oh my gosh, maybe American Gumption's too small. Maybe it needs to be global gumption.
And of course, I love the alliteration.
So I, but for now it's American Gumption, and global gumption is, maybe will be the next incarnation after this one gets going. So.
Yeah. So we're in a transition phase right now for humanity. So the next 3 years, let's see what things look like after that.
Yeah.
So what you've been doing since August is basically not getting the show on the road so much, but getting accustomed to creating the American Gumption show and getting accustomed to being on camera and getting accustomed to interviewing guests and really owning that message of gumption.
Yeah, yeah.
But what started happening this week when you came to visit me is that now you're starting to learn how to, it's a testing taking the show on the road, which is what you've been doing this past week.
That's right. I called it a beta, where it's like, I'm going to take the American Gumption show on the road. And so, we want to do these interviews, just like we're doing a broadcast here. Now, normally what would happen is we're not sitting next to each other. There's like a little line right down here,
right.
Where, you're in Redondo Beach and I'm back in Pennsylvania and we're talking to each other. And that certainly worked pretty good. And that's what I did for the, first 140 plus shows. And then this next couple of weeks, I'm out there, as I drive a car across the country. I'm just stopping and visiting. I'm not living in the RV, but I've stopped along the way meeting people and brought some camera equipment and some, a computer and a way to access the internet, right? This isn't complicated. And you just set up and broadcast. And what's really been fun so far is that the energy of being face to face and being with each other is something that we need. And it has a different feeling. It has a better feeling. And Zoom and the virtual, actually works pretty good. And it's not like it's terrible. It's actually very good. But meeting people face to face is really what it's all about. We are social creatures. We want to be near each other. It feels better when you're connecting. You're connecting.
Yeah. See? We have spent the week together. We've been finishing each other's
We're almost finishing each other. We are finishing each other's sentences.
A long last soul brother. Yeah, so it's been super just amazing getting to hear your story and what you're doing with it, how you're making a difference in the world with your own story. I think that's the reason we have stories. We all have a story, and so a lot of people get caught up in their story and being a victim to their story, which you could do. You could get into the whole victim mentality of how the economy ruined my life. I lost all my houses. I lost my dreams. I lost my career, and allow that to then drag you down this, perpetual pity party for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And be victim to the story. Or take that pain story and choose it to be the catapult that pushes you into creating something entirely new, not only for yourself, but now making a difference for all of humanity. And that's really the world that we're moving into now. That old world is the collective, I'm getting this. So I call it the fear-based reality, the collective pity party, right? Or the collective victim to the scenario party. And this new world that we're creating is completely different. It's now using our personal history and the collective history of humanity and saying, now, how can we use this past painful story to create a new world? So we no longer have to be victim to our collective story. Yes, it exists. We acknowledge that we had really painful stories, and my life by no means has been, I've had some really beautiful, fantastic times, and I've had some really, really painful times in my life. What I know now is that I chose to be born into that cult, that polygamous religious cult, so that I could do the work that my soul is here to do on a bigger scale. And for you, the same thing. Like, you would have never known when you were a kid being that troublemaker, that actually was like laying the groundwork for you to now become the gumption guide that you now are.
Yeah.
And helping to bring out the best in humanity by you being out there and having these interviews. And what I love about your show is that you're going across the country right now, going across the country via Zoom, but still out there, right? Meeting people who have gumption. And what does American Gumption mean? What does American Gumption mean?
Well, gumption, for me, gumption means personal responsibility, taking responsibility for the way you think, for the way you act, and the way you interact with others. So that's how I defined gumption, or with a capital G. Traditional gumption is kind of like it's kind of two pieces. One is like a kind of a common sense or a knowing, an instinct, or the second definition for the traditional gumption is like a tenacity and persistence and grit. So somehow it's like a combination of like inner knowing and then just physical perseverance in getting something done. So I think that all of those things apply, that grit and determination and kind of common sense, along with the personal responsibility for your thoughts, actions, and interactions with others. And an American is really my belief that this is a great country, and the founding of it was based on freedom and opportunity for all, and that you were judged by your efforts, and you were able to create yourself. And how many millions of immigrants came to this country and created better lives for it. So I still believe in what this country was based on and what it was founded on. And so I want to be, offer whatever help I can, give to supporting that and being positive about our future and, creating a better future for all of us as we go forward. So there's lots of divisiveness in our country right now. And, I just believe that we are more in common than we have, uncommon with each other. And that maybe we're just going through a bit of a phase where, there's a little bit of, family feud going on.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. A family feud is going on. So, this idea of going across the country and finding individuals that have gumption. So my sense of that is finding people who are choosing to use what they have, their resources, their story, their spiritual gifts, whatever it is, to make an impact in their small community in the way that they are and making a difference in the country, making a difference even across the globe. How are people, rather than sitting back and having the pity party of the whole world is falling apart around me, who are saying, you know what, I'm going to do something about this, and have the gumption to do something about that and to help make their world, their community, this country, this planet a better place. And it isn't about changing the world so much. It's about using the gifts that we have and the tenacity and the God-given gift of creation. We're having this conversation this morning. At the heart of all human beings is our ability to create. So what are we doing with this creative life force that exists within every single one of us? And when we start to remember we have that creative life force inside of us, I think that kind of like lights up the heart of gumption.
Yeah.
What am I going to do to help make a difference?
Yeah, I think when I began my transformation back in 2009, there's one analogy that's really kind of stuck with me, and that is like, are you going to, continue to sit in the bleachers and watch, or are you going to get down on the field and actually play and make a difference? And so gumption is about, walking down from the bleachers and getting on the field and taking control of your own life. And ultimately that's all we can be responsible for is, again, our thoughts, actions, and our interactions with others. And when you do that, blame and anger and all of the things that frustrate and annoy and bother start to disappear. Because if it's really all about, me maintaining my thinking and me maintaining the actions that I take and me taking responsibility for the way that I interact with others, then they, if they're having an experience that isn't good for them, then I need to either modify my own way of being, or I need to just remove myself from it because I don't want to cause any, difficulty and pain for people.
Right. So ultimately, if we are here and we want to make a difference in transforming our communities, transforming our country, transforming the world, it all starts, as we know, with transforming what's inside of ourselves. So all of those labels that you just used of guilt and resentment and anger, and those are all fear-based. So that's what I call fear-based beliefs. So when we start to actually take a look at all of those and transmute them and transform them inside of ourselves, then we can be of greater service to the world. So there's so much that we can do to make a difference, but if we're trying to change the world from a heart of resentment, it's not nearly as effective as if we've done our own inner work and then doing that, being a difference in the world from being actually, and we had this before, actually being the change we want to see in the world.
Yeah.
And owning that inside of ourselves and playing on the field, like you were saying, is actively being that, being willing to come down off the bleachers of I'm just going to sit back here and hold the love and light, and I'm going to be that, which is great. For some people, that is their role, is to just sit and hold that for the rest of humanity. And what Spirit's asking us now is to be willing to come down out of the bleachers and get on the ball fields and actively be the change we want to see in the world. So that's what I see you doing, and each of us doing it our own way. And the way that you have the ability to be the change, to be the active change, is through the camera.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think a lot of us are feeling compelled to do, because we can do it right here in our own homes. And when enough of us start to flood the airwaves with good news, the bad news just dissipates, because, as we've said before, fear can't exist in the presence of love.
Yeah.
So
since I don't have to do it from a home, I could do it from an RV traveling around, and I'll have my own little studio inside of the RV, and we'll just meet the people. And then this way we'll still do it through the airwaves. But we'll do it, where we actually can invite people to come in and have a conversation.
And so you're going to have a real road show.
I'm going to have a real road show. It's all happening.
Taking the show on the road.
And I might go back and visit Montana, because I loved it, Montana. It was a wonderful place to be, and the mountains, and it made me feel good. And I'm actually really liking hanging out by the ocean. That's a pretty cool place to be too. So There's a lot of great places, and that's the nice thing about what American Gumption is that no matter where you are, you can create a great life. And I just like to go visit these nice places and meet the nice people who are creating good lives for themselves. Ordinary Americans, or ordinary individuals living extraordinary lives. Yeah.
And extraordinary lives doesn't mean living extraordinary lives and the fame and fortune lives. Nope. It's about being extraordinary human beings.
That's right. Yeah. It's not lifestyles of the rich and famous. It's lifestyles of the ordinary, just doing the extraordinary, the salt of the earth type of people.
Yeah. And so then in the process, you're also going to be showing Americans, well, technically, because we have this ability now to live stream all over the entire planet all at once, you're going to be showing the world the landscape of America.
Yes, yeah. So
maybe part of this is teaching Americans to fall in love with America again.
Oh, that would be great. And I just love traveling around. I when I was 22 years old, 1980, I took a cross country trip, and I went to every national park, and I spent 3 months, Memorial Day to Labor Day, and I just loved the country at that point. I went to into the back country and hiked and visited these national treasures that we have, and I went, oh my gosh, that was fun. And then you go back and you get a job, and you're working and you're doing things, and and life kind of takes over, and you stop doing those things. And so this will be a chance to visit some of those places too, and show some of that beauty, and meet some of the people who are there enjoying it. So
yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea, and that's a way for you that you're being of service to humanity.
Yeah. So want to go?
Yeah, I'll come join you. I can't go on the road with you. So, okay, for all you single ladies out there, Steve's looking for a fearless and free co-host who's got gumption to go on the road with him.
Not free co-host, a fearless co-host, and a free loving.
But you don't want somebody who's so tied down and attached.
That's right. Right. So it's somebody who can travel around and be able to go and do this and live that kind of a lifestyle. You still have responsibilities. You've got some kids, some great kids that are still need to be launched. They're getting closer. Yeah. They're not ready to. You can't.
I'm not ready to leave my home base.
Yes. So, but we will travel around, and what's really great about our community of people that we're connecting with is that when we do stop and visit, you feel like you're at home for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm very I feel kind of privileged, right, that you got to come and hang with me for all this week. And we did, I didn't tell these guys about all the traveling we did this week. We had so much fun. So as you know, I just got started earlier this year with Spirituality Gone Wild. Steve's a key player. And then Debbie, who's the creator of the entire concept. We went to Huntington Beach, which is about an hour from my house, drove down and met her. And then we went out to Palm Springs and met a couple of people out there who are part of the show. Joan of Angels was out there, who I haven't met. And then Steve met a couple of people, again, that I've met. So what I was saying in the beginning of the show, of people coming into my life, Dr. Sharon Stroud and Prince Fleet Easton were both out there, and Julian, he pops up on almost all my feeds because he's an awesome supporter. And so I've known these guys for years, but you had never met them before.
Right.
So Steve got to meet these people, and we're all now we're like, ooh, what are we going to do together next? It's like bringing the soul family together. And when we were in Palm Springs, Fleet was saying the same thing, that people from his past are showing up. Yeah. So there's something amazing brewing right now.
Energetically, we're finding what used to feel like differences are really connections, and we're coming back together. And what Fleet had said was people from we all have different parts of our lives. We know like one group of people here and another group of people here, and he said I'm noticing that like the groups are like there's crossover happening, and that's because energetically we are the like-minded are just going to find each other. Yeah. And we recognize each other when we see each other, and it doesn't matter that we didn't know we hadn't yet met. When we meet we recognize and we know who those people are.
Yeah, it is. It's like I call it the soul family coming back together. Mm. So we're starting to recognize each other, and what I'm seeing happening in the near future, beginning this year, is a lot more of this intercreation. So that what I was seeing a few years ago is bright lights here and bright lights there, and the bright lights are kind of coming together into lighthouses, if you will. So one of my favorite quotes I've been using the last couple of years is "Together we shine brighter." And I feel like that's really what's starting to happen now, is that we're starting to grab the like-hearted people are starting to gravitate together, so that we can create entirely new concepts. And we're creating an entirely new world, right? Yep. Which means we have to create new systems and new ways of doing business, and that's what's happening. These like-hearted and like-minded people are coming together, and we are going to be creating entirely new concepts. And one of those that I've been sensing is creating an entirely new entertainment industry that's based in global consciousness rather than global control. So that's what we're a part of. And it's been really, really amazing the last couple of months of starting to see how this is all coming together so beautifully, and all of the elements are coming together. The other thing I noticed is that when you're on path, what happens? Magic. Yeah. Miracles. Yeah. Miracles.
Yeah. As you go down the path and you have a clear intention, and you are doing it, with a joy and with the, from the heart. When you do that, these synchronicities just start happening. And it's just or as a phrase that Deepak uses is synchrodestinies.
Ooh, so, I like that.
Synchrodestinies. So yeah, we all just sort of start connecting with each other, and the beautiful thing is once you start seeing these things happening, you want more of them, and all you have to do is just sort of allow and trust and move forward with, again, that not trying to force something, not trying to force an outcome, and it all just tends to work out.
Yeah. So the universe, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, places the synchronicities in our path, and it's up to us to recognize the synchronicities and actually do something with them. So that's when we talk about the law of attraction. That's what I talk about. I'm like, action is part of the word attraction. So we attract it into our lives. We still need to act upon it, because the spirit's not going to do the work for us. We actually have to get out of bleachers and get down on the game and the field and play. So,
and part of this little 3.5 week beta or practice or exploring is really about taking action, getting in the car, driving, knocking on doors, making phone calls in advance to see if it's possible that we can meet, sending messages, coordinating all that. That's the action you take.
mm-hmm.
And then once you get there, that's when the magic can begin to happen.
Yeah. And it's not hard work.
No.
It's
fun.
yes, it's work, but it's fun. So when we're following our heart's direction,
mm-hmm.
the action actually is play.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's been really cool to just play in the field of intercreation and the idea that success has to be hard work. That's part of that old world too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was taught that. And, it's nothing wrong with hard work, but it better be things that you love doing.
Right.
And then once you love doing it and you're working hard, it doesn't really feel like hard work. It feels like play.
Yeah, it's not like you're out, digging holes.
Not like wearing a pirate bandana to keep the sweat from, getting in your eyes.
Yeah, so it's divinely guided action.
Divinely guided action. I love that.
So we recognize the synchronicities and we act upon them, and then be open and willing for the new synchronicities to come in. And a lot of this requires trust, which is a really new thing for a lot of humanity, is to be in this place of trust. So you've been really practicing that this week of not having a tightly timed agenda. Like, so you have your plans, but you've been trusting that what is best will just line up for you. And that's exactly what's been happening.
Yeah, no, I had okay, I was going to arrive on Sunday evening and I got to leave by Friday midday. And I knew that there were certain things that were going to happen in there, but the exact timing of it, it all just sort of worked out magically and perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. So American Gumption is on the road.
We're on the road.
Yeah.
Follow along, AmericanGumption.com, either on my American Gumption Facebook page or on the American Gumption YouTube channel, or you can find it through Spirituality Gone Wild.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you this week.
Thank you, Victoria. And thank you for allowing me to be part of your world and your sphere, because that's been good for me. That's been healthy for me to be around some positive, divine feminine energy, and it's been very good for me. So thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Well, thank you all for being here this morning. And as always, get bold, be fearless, and live free. Mwah. Be sure to hop on over to my official website at victoriareynolds.com and pick up your free gift, and check out all the other goodies that I have there for you.